ban lifted. Now the 5AA forecast, partly cloudy, a possible late shower and 21 today. Tomorrow, showers and 15. Saturday, a possible shower and 13. Showers for Sunday, 13 again, then a shower or two for Monday and Tuesday next week, with temperatures staying in the low teens. More news as it happens on 5AA.
This is Peter Godfrey. If you or anyone you know is impacted by problem gambling, call the Gambling Helpline on 1800 858 858.
Good morning, 6 minutes past 5 now. Temperature's 14 degrees. Fairly pleasant morning if you're up early. Let's take a look at what's happening across the ditch. Selwyn Manning with us from EveningReport.nz. Selwyn, your side of the ditch, how's it looking this morning?
It's a little bit inclement weather, Peter. Looks like a few showers in the Auckland area, mainly in the morning, and we've got temperatures a high of 15 degrees, maybe pushing just above that, and an overnight low of 8 degrees. So kind of similar to you guys before the spring arrives, and then you guys take off like someone on roller skates. But not too bad.
And I'm oiling up the wheels of my roller skates ready for the takeoff into the warmer weather, I tell you.
Yeah, it's this kind of time of the year, isn't it, that you kind of all of us look to seeing those spring flowers and the buds on the trees and think, oh, thank goodness, here we come.
Absolutely.
Here it comes.
Absolutely. What's a few headlines in your part of the world this morning?
Yes, the New Zealand Herald is leading with a topic that we're going to expand on just in a short time, but its lead story there is the comment on New Zealand house prices, New Zealand dollar. It's all about to burst is the headline, though the detail is very, very rich in this article by the ANZ CEO, like you promoted just before the news, Peter, where he's warning on a number of grounds that there is not enough action from the New Zealand national-led government on that, but we'll go into that in a bit more depth in a short time. There's an exclusive relating to the United States Vice President, Mr. Biden, over here in New Zealand at the moment, and there's a lot of discussion around what does this mean, and it seems like what this visit is all about is, one, trying to address the issue that President Obama never made a visit to New Zealand as he had intended during his terms in office, and also so it's a consolation kind of visit in a sense, but also paving the way for United States Navy ships to arrive in New Zealand, to visit New Zealand for the first time in over 30 years since our anti-nuclear stance came into play in around 1987. And that's an interesting issue there, that the United States has always held out from sending a Navy ship here, even though they were welcome as long as they were not nuclear-powered or nuclear-armed. And of course it's neither confirm nor deny policy always stopped that from occurring. But it looks like there's a little bit of a breakthrough there, not in our law, but in the United States' approach there. Also in the Stuff website, we've got a localised story relating to toxic culture and how that impacts on the locals. There's also a headline here, Against Time, Botched Bill, Dad Bereft. So that's about something that's gone very, very wrong there in a home that has been built and the dad is suffering from it. Radio New Zealand, brand new website that it's got at the moment, and it's certainly very pleased about it. It's a nice, clean look. And once again, it's hitting with this housing issue, Peter. It's the issue that won't go away because it's a big problem, and it's crying out for solutions. Radio New Zealand is saying New Zealand better off without housing investors, and once again quoting the ANZ boss there. And it's also looking at tight security ahead of unitary plans release. Now that's talking once again about housing, about the Auckland Council's approach to its regulation around where it will zone for residential development. Is it going to go up? Is it going to spread out and sprawl further? Or is it going to be a mixture of both? Probably the latter, Peter. And that's pretty much the rundown of the news over here at the moment.
All right, well, let's get on to this big story that all of those are covering. So your very hot housing market, 1.1 million, the median price there in Auckland, and on the back of that, the head of ANZ is, pretty blunt warning that the market could collapse.
That's
Pretty
the words
serious.
used, and to a direct quote, he says, and when it does so, it will be, and here's the quote, a messy end of quote. So that you can't get more blunt than that, can you, in economic terms? That's coming from the ANZ Chief Executive, David Hisco. He wrote in the New Zealand Herald specifically and in depth about his concerns here in the economics that are in the lack of policy that is allowing the Auckland housing market to actually take off and become so hot that it destabilises the New Zealand economy. Got to say, Peter, we've been talking on your program about this very issue for going back over a year as it leads in. So it's not as if this whole issue has become an issue of surprise for the New Zealand national-led government. It's certainly one that it has failed to actually tackle, would be fair to say. Now, this Mr. Hisco, the Chief Executive of the ANZ Bank, he's the latest in quite a long line of respected people that have been speaking publicly over their concerns that the government is not doing enough to arrest this rapid acceleration. And like what you were saying there, Peter, the median residential house prices in Auckland in particular, but also in some of the other regional towns and cities in New Zealand as well. Now, in this article, Mr. Hisco, and this is specific, he says, and this is a quote here, New Zealand is a great country and we've come out of the global financial crisis well compared to many. But logic tells me things cannot continue to run this hot. And he goes on further in his quotes, Peter, where he is saying that there are storm clouds on the horizon for sure, and when they break, who knows what will happen. He says one thing is certain. If employers start laying off staff, and this is the scenario he gives here, and it's a direct quote, Peter, if employers start laying off staff because exports to an uncertain world are dropping, those people won't be able to afford their mortgages, and when that happens, they will sell their houses. And he says if unemployment rises and the dollar drops, overseas investors will cash in their chips and sell, most probably in a stampede, of course, causing downward pressure, and down those high prices go. People's equity, Peter, suddenly dissolves overnight or over a period of a month or so, and they're left high and dry. We saw similar things happen in the United States, which led to the global financial crisis. Obviously, New Zealand won't have that kind of a burden on the rest of the world, but it's still all the indicators are there for a disaster unless some things are happening. So what is happening here? The Reserve Bank on Monday, Peter, it indicated that it was going to, and it did, hike up the loan-to-value ratios. That's the amount of deposit that a person or an investor, well, in this case, it's an investor, that investors need to have before they can purchase a property. Now, it was at 30% for investors and also first home buyers. Now, with investors, the Reserve Bank lifted that to 40% this week, Peter. And many are saying, Mr. Hisco, the head of the ANZ Bank, is saying that is not enough, that it should, if it's going to use the LVR as a lever to try and cool down the housing market and get investors out of the road so real people can get family homes, then he reckons it should go up to perhaps a minimum of 60%, which is obviously drastic measures there. He was on the radio also only about New Zealand, Radio New Zealand only about 10 minutes ago, Peter, and he was saying there that that is the one tool that is being used, but he said really it requires many, many different types of tools, and his solutions that he lists in his articles are, he believes that increasing once again that LVR for property investors to get the investors out of exploiting the rapid rising in prices. He believes that we should be weakening the New Zealand dollar. What that does, Peter, is obviously stimulate the export businesses in the country toward more profitability. Remember, the dairy sector, as we've discussed on your program, has been struggling while the dollar has been climbing against the United States dollar. The ANZ Bank CEO also says that voluntary tightening of lending criteria by banks must be in evidence, and he's obviously leading the charge there, and a review of immigration policies. He's saying that is an absolute fundamental that needs to be addressed, and that is one specific area where the National-led government has refused to acknowledge that there is a contributing problem there with the rates of immigration and also foreign investment coming into the country and speculating and exploiting the New Zealand growth bubble there. One last thing, Peter, and that is the advice here, the solution point is have a strong focus on infrastructure build, particularly in the growth regions. And infrastructure direct investment from the government in that area is an area that the government doesn't want to do. It favours doing a helicopter drop-styled tax cut after the next election, which is obviously not going to help in any way the fundamental problems with the New Zealand domestic economy led by this housing bursting bubble, if you like.
Yeah. Has with this fear coming from the head of a bank that obviously worries about its profits probably first and foremost, and assumedly would profit more when their lending is greater, but if they're warning about these sorts of things, maybe for their own fears that they might lose some money, but obviously that must add urgency to the issue that whilst they might lose some profits if things do drop, so will the rest of the country. So has this warning added a seriousness to the conversation there?
Yeah, it certainly has. It's extremely unusual, isn't it? From both sides of this ditch, from Australia or New Zealand context, for leaders of a significant bank, the biggest bank in New Zealand in our experience here, to actually give these kind of warnings and to wade in on policy solutions. That's usually the area of governments to actually set and opposition parties to pressure. The response immediately from those opposition parties was the government hasn't been listening to our solutions all the way through. Some of these solutions are included in the list of the ANZ CEO's solutions. Hopefully the government will start to listen to the people from the private sector here and get some gains on the ground, get some solutions rolling out there. The government has been focusing on supply almost entirely. And supply is obviously the medium and long-term remedy to a lot of the problems here when you've got a heated market. But as far as the demand part, it just didn't want to touch it, didn't want to go near it. So, yeah, there's ripples overnight. This article came out in the New Zealand Herald yesterday. There's certainly been a lot of attention to it today. Already you've had investors kind of saying, hey, don't clobber us with the big stick. We're not the only contributor to this issue, this problem. But it's a widening part of an underlying understanding, I should say, of an underlying economic problem here. And you're quite right, Peter, what you were talking about there is that when the banks start to say that, they are at risk, they are looking toward getting themselves into trouble because people can't pay their mortgages in this kind of recipe, then you've got another indicator that there is major concerns from a broad-based sector that is just not satisfied. I also wonder too, like the ANZ Bank is obviously huge in Australia, and it's an Australian-owned, as I understand it, dominant on the ownership schedules there. And I wonder whether or not the ANZ is saying to its CEO, yeah, go for it. The ideal, I guess, is comparative economics and comparative policies. New Zealand is out of step with Australia on this one. There is no safeguards for the New Zealand market here, the residential market, with respect to overseas buyers, for example. I understand that the policy there with you guys is in a broad sense, although in some cases it gets, there's ways of getting around it, but that foreign buyers cannot get existing residential homes, that they must purchase new ones. Now, over in New Zealand, it's just a free-for-all. And there's nothing at the gate saying in any way or form, look, New Zealand needs to be looking after its own interests here, and it's, this free market kind of approach in a global sense. All it's doing is ratcheting up prices to what you would expect in New York.
New York, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
has John Key or your finance minister responded to specifically to the call from David Hisco?
Specifics, no. We had Stephen Joyce, who's the Prime Minister's overseas, having a bit of a sojourn at the moment. The Stephen Joyce is kind of their Mr. Fix-It man, and he kind of says, we agree with some of the things that the ANZ Bank bosses said, but we don't agree with others. The government's clearly got a plan and it's sticking to it, and over time it should adjust in a favourable way. So, that's a paraphrase, but that's pretty much the government stance at the moment. Bill English, he criticised people last week about, some of the points that are raised in this article, and that this seems like the government has become deaf to the demands now of various very powerful sectors, and one would imagine that there are a lot of visits to, Government House and the Beehive at the moment, trying to get some sense into policy.
Mm.
I'll let you know if anything changes.
Yeah, indeed. All right, so we'll just have a quick break and we'll be back with you. A bit of a Sky show you guys have had. Be interesting to find out more about that in a moment. Be right back with you. Selwyn Manning's with us. He's editor of EveningReport.nz.
5AA Breakfast.
The Trump camp might have had 5 excuses for the plagiarisation of Michelle Obama, but what about Rick Astley? Have you heard this one?
He will never, ever give up. And most importantly, he will never, ever let you down.
What's going on there?
5AA Breakfast. Weekday mornings from 6 on 1395. Adelaide's 5AA.
Hello, Frank Walker from National Tiles. Our 37th birthday sale is on all this weekend. To celebrate, in an absolute first, all National Tiles are slashed to 30% off. This weekend only. Yes, 30% off all National Tiles this weekend only. Absolutely no exceptions. Don't miss our first ever 30% off every National Tile sale. This weekend only.
Are you looking for natural joint pain relief? Caruso's Glucosamine 1500 contains Glucosalive, an environmentally friendly, bio-fermented glucosamine suitable for vegans, vegetarians and people with a shellfish allergy. Caruso's Glucosamine 1500 is made in Australia, comes with a money-back guarantee and is available for $24.99 at Chemist Warehouse. Always read the label. Use only as directed. If symptoms persist, see your healthcare professional. Chemist Warehouse. You'll find them all over South Australia.
Where do you go for a $3,000 minimum trade-in? That's right, $3,000 minimum trade-in on a new or demo Mitsubishi? You go to Agostino. Right now at Agostino Mitsubishi, you'll get $3,000 minimum trade-in on new and demo Mirage and Lancer. Yes, $3,000 minimum trade-in. Terms and conditions apply. So go to Agostino Mitsubishi. 2 great locations. LVD 25301.
If you or anyone you know is impacted by problem gambling, seek help at problemgambling.sa.gov.au. This is Peter Godfrey.
23 minutes past 5, and Selwyn Manning, editor of EveningReport.nz, is with us. Some news from across the ditch in New Zealand. Now, Selwyn, bit of a Sky show overnight Tuesday night into Wednesday over there.
Yeah, it certainly was, Peter. Fiery orbit object, I should say. It lit up the southern skies of New Zealand, so those on the South Island got quite a spectacle there. It was on Tuesday night and caused hundreds of people to basically write their accounts, put them on social media, wanting really to know what it was. Really stood out more than, perhaps the average shooting star. Now, some people thought it might have been a meteor. Others wondered if it was actually an aircraft on fire and crashing back to Earth. It was just that big, Apparently, it was most likely to be space junk, and even more likely, according to astronomers there, that it was the booster rocket that launched a craft that connected with the International Space Station earlier in the week or over the weekend. So that space junk apparently is reasonably common in its sightings and that fiery re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere, and commonplace over Australia as well, apparently, as I understand it, Peter, in that there have been examples of actually some of the junk actually hitting the ground in different times. Reports over this side of the ditch.
Time to time, actually, curiously, that this comes on the anniversary. I think it was last week. It was the anniversary of Skylab falling to Earth that had bits of junk landing in WA and sort of a bit further west as well. But yeah, I mean, it is relatively common, and perhaps more so with the amount of space junk that's up there. Major problem.
I was reading a little bit about it last night, and apparently with the amount of satellites that have been sent up there, that the increase in the space junk is very much from the the rocket, if you like, put it that way, that gets the satellite up there, and then after a couple of days or so, that rocket and the bits will come back down. Getting rid of the satellites and steering them back into burning up in the atmosphere is also part of the technologies once they've done their dash. But I found the whole thing quite interesting. You know, I remember sitting there. It was down by the Manukau Harbour, which is on the western side, the Tasman Sea side of the South Auckland area, and sitting there one night at my brother's place. It was a warm summer's evening. I was there with one of my nephews and just chatting away, and next thing we heard all this crackle in the sky and a bit of a zing kind of thing. We look up, and there was a huge fiery, object of some sort. We thought may have been a meteor, but maybe it was a bit of space junk kind of burning up as it came in. There's a lot of talk over here, Peter, which was, I've got to say, was quite fantastic, and we never ever forgot that. But there's a lot of talk over here at the moment about the International Space Station once it's finally deconstructed and its bits are left to re-enter or be deployed to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere and burn up. Just when that would be and what part of the world it's going to come down. I guess people are, in this week anyway, are much more aware of some of the things that are flying up there above us, Peter.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I think you guys are not far from sort of an area in the southern Pacific Ocean that they refer to as the spacecraft graveyard. There's a sort of an area there that I think they kind of... The trajectory they try to put into this stuff is to head it that way, so that anything that doesn't burn up sort of lands in this fairly remote part of the southern Pacific Ocean. So I guess they're not going to get it right all the time, and maybe that's what you were seeing a bit of the other morning.
Yeah, it was heading northwest apparently when it went over the horizon earlier this week. So it may have been heading your way.
Maybe. But do you know? Did anyone capture it on video and post it on social media or anything?
Yes, if people go online, YouTube or the social media, and they put in space junk over in New Zealand and put in the search around this week, there's some quite amazing stuff. People even caught it on iPhone cameras, so that shows you how bright it was.
Oh wow, okay.
You didn't. So of course up here in the North Island in Auckland, we didn't see anything. There was no sightings of it, but it's fantastic apparently. But the people's account where they thought it could have been an aircraft burning up. That shows you just how different this thing was.
Yeah. Well, I guess thankfully it wasn't.
I kind of thought how amazing it would be to get a telescope. It kind of reminded me of a long-wanted wish of mine. One of my bucket list things is get a telescope and to have a hobby looking up.
Absolutely. Well, I could refer you to the website of a chap we speak to every week that on those sorts of matters, a bloke by the name of David Hisco. If you Google Astro Dave, you'll find his website, and he's got a lot of you'll find plenty of stuff on there about that sort of thing, and that'll whet your appetite some more and send you off to the telescope shop pretty soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds... I'll definitely do that.
Yeah.
That'd be excellent.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, Selwyn, many thanks for joining us this morning. Have yourself a great week and keep your eyes up. See, you never know, you might spot some more space junk.
Fantastic.
Hopefully it won't land on your head. All the best. Thanks, Selwyn.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Selwyn Manning, editor of EveningReport.nz. Coming up to 29 minutes past 5, and Stone along in the moment with the latest 5AA news, sport and weather. David and Will for breakfast. Bit over half an hour away after 6 o'clock here at 5AA. In between time, plenty of times for your calls. Give us a call, whatever's on your mind. 8223 0000.
Fitzy. And obviously you're alerting to my football career. You're both going to get stuffed.
Ryan Fitzy Fitzgerald joins David and Will on 5AA Breakfast.
It's quality, not quantity, boys. That's the way I look at my footy career.
Every Friday, Fitzy gives us his take on all things AFL and shares his tips round by round. Fitzy. Every Friday morning with David and Will. Thanks to Hotline 40. The right car deserves the right part. Hotline40.com.au on 1395. Adelaide's 5AA.
Nordic Honda invites you to chase your dreams behind the wheel of the bold new Honda Civic at Adelaide's leading Honda dealer. The new Civic features remarkable Earth Dreams technology, Apple CarPlay and Auto Android as standard, plus edgy new styling and an exhilarating drive. So experience this bold new Civic up close. Book a test drive today and chase your dreams at Nordic Honda, top of Glen Osmond Road.
Another top deal from the top of Glen Osmond Road. Nordic Honda.
Nordic Honda.
Their tops.
This is Adelaide's 5AA.
A late shower and 22 today. It's 5:30. I'm Anne Stone. Correctional Services Department procedures will be reviewed following a blunder with an inmate. Robert Rigney was due to return to custody from day leave last Friday. He tried to surrender himself at Yatala Prison and then the Holden Hill Police Station. It's believed Rigney spent 20 minutes at Yatala trying to turn himself in and then waited 2 hours at the Holden Hill Station. Rigney remains on the run. It's been revealed 35 patients were forced to walk out of the Lyell McEwin Hospital on Monday as the number of emergency department patients hit an unprecedented high. 240 patients were admitted over the 24 hours, with up to 80 waiting to be attended to at one stage. SA Health says it's not due to transfers from Modbury Hospital because of the transforming health changes, but Dr David Pope from the Salaried Medical Officers Association disagrees.
To say that the changes at Modbury have had no effect at Lyell McEwin is simply not true. There's no doubt there's ever-increasing numbers of ambulances coming to the Lyell McEwin that previously would have gone to Modbury Hospital.
A man will face court in Sydney after being charged with being a member of a terrorist organisation. More from Laura Parr.
The 38-year-old was taken into custody after the Australian Federal Police conducted raids in North Sydney and DY. He's since been charged and will face Parramatta Local Court today via video link, where police will allege he was a member of the Kurdistan Workers' Party. The organisation, also known as the PKK, is deemed a militant terrorist group by the US and NATO. The AFP says there's no current or impending threat of a terrorist act to the Australian community arising from the investigation.
Treasurer Scott Morrison isn't ruling out room for change in the federal government's new superannuation policy. Nationals MP George Christensen has threatened to cross the floor, demanding the government backs down on a plan to cap